Welcome to Business Class, a podcast for people wanting to upgrade their thinking, upgrade their learning, and upgrade their life. I'm your host, Eugenia, founder of Business Class Collective, best-selling author, and life coach. If you're an entrepreneur, a startup, or someone who dreams of reaching their full potential, then you're in the right place. You'll feel empowered and inspired to design the life you've always wanted. Let's do this. Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm thrilled to have you back. It's been some time since my last podcast episode, early December to be quite precise. A lot has happened during this time, and I'm going to share with you just how much has happened. You see, it's in everyday life that we get glimpses of the person we are, what we're capable of handling, and how we get to show up, and how we must always choose to rise. At the end of the day, you are up to you. So work-wise, there was a lot to be completed before the end of the year, and that meant completing my work commitments, scheduling tasks to occur whilst I was on break, and generally making it to the finish line with a trip to Melbourne included to celebrate Christmas with my work team people. That was just such a wonderful opportunity to catch up with everyone, and we had so much fun. After that, I decided to take a hiatus, a much-needed pause away from the everyday demands of work. So much had happened last year, and it's just what I needed. So plans for Christmas were underway, and invites for New Year had come in, but something happened that made me change my plans. I'm an advocate for listening to the whispers of the universe, and I'll explain why and how this relates to how I spent New Year's. It was the last week of 2022, and on a hot summer's afternoon, my youngest daughter and I decided to go to the beach for a swim, a walk, and dinner. Helena forgot something in the car and returned to get what she needed. As she took a couple of steps, she misplaced her footing and fell down. I was ahead of her and turned around to find her on the ground. I couldn't believe what had happened, out of nowhere. Her knees were grazed, and thankfully that's all that happened, but it was unusual and so sudden and so very freaky, to be quite honest. A couple of days later, my sister and I were having dinner at a lovely restaurant, Asian European fusion. After dinner, my sister had ordered a take-out dinner for her husband and son, and she invited me to go back to hers so that we could all catch up. I parked my car on the street and waited for an approaching car to pass before I crossed the road. The driver of that car stopped and insisted I cross. I insisted he pass. This went back and forth for another round when I decided that I would cross the road. Somehow I lost my footing and I fell like a pin to the ground. My sister was in shock when she turned to see me in the middle of the road. But what happened next is quite unforgettable. The driver who insisted I cross the road drove off around me without stopping to see if I was okay. I truly believe it was unbelievable, and that left me in shock too. So, you learn every single day about how things might turn out. Anyway, the next day I was taking photos of my daughter wearing the shoes that she had designed, and somehow I ended up near the kitchen bench. When I rose, I hit my head quite hard. Then my daughter moved her glass drink bottle and it fell, and you guessed it, glass shattered all over the floor. This is what needed to happen. Something had to break in order to release the negative energy that somehow had attached itself to us. It might sound a bit superstitious, but how are we to know the difference? Now I felt that I had a clear message from the universe, and my plans to travel to my beach house for New Year's were placed on hold. Usually I'd get there a few days earlier and enjoy time at the beach, swimming, taking walks, watching the amazing sunsets over drinks, and celebrate with friends, family and neighbours. Instead, I stayed home and saw the old year out from the comfort of my home. My daughter returned from her night out just before midnight, which was wonderful, as we got to wish each other a Happy New Year and cut the traditional Greek New Year cake that I had prepared earlier. I also decided to stay home on New Year's Day to welcome in the year peacefully. It's just what I needed. I just needed to be alone and I didn't want to tempt any more fate. So I kind of felt we had a big few episodes in that last part of the year, so I just wanted to play it safe. Anyway, I did make my way to the beach house and had a wonderful few days partying on the York Peninsula. It included a drive to Chinaman Wells to visit my nephew's beach house and to partake in celebrating his beautiful wife's birthday. All in all, it was wonderful to be by the sea and taking in the sights and having fun. But months earlier, I had booked the Great Southern Rail luxury 3-day train journey from Adelaide to Brisbane. And of course, that meant doing it in style, naturally securing a gold cabin complete with an ensuite. Who wouldn't want that? I love to travel by train, dressing up, relaxing with a glass of champagne in hand, connecting with fellow travellers, and taking in the sights of the ever-changing landscape as the train travelled across 4 states. I remember that on one evening the sun was setting on one side of the carriage and the moon was rising on the other. It was just magical. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting 3 amazing people. I met lots of people, had conversations with lots, but there was a connection with these 3 people, Pam, Anthony and Ross, and I'm so grateful for their company and conversation. 2 of them are horticulturalists, and as you may remember, I studied horticulture in my 30s, and my eldest daughter has just completed a horticulture course. So we had so much in common with our shared passion, as well as the shared appreciation of fine wine, champagne and train travel. The breakfast and dinner service in the Queen Adelaide dining carriage is second to none, and there was always a place for me at this special trio's table. I'll share with you now just some of the journey and the adventures that we had. So the first was an Epicurean experience matched with the most amazing wines at Best West Great and Western Winery in the Grampians. This winery prides itself as one of the country's oldest continually family-owned and operated wineries, with wines made from some of the oldest and rarest vines in the world. It truly was a beautiful experience. After falling asleep to the lulling of the train rolling over the tracks, the next stop was Canberra, where we lunched at Old Parliament House. There was a quote in one of the foyers by Anay Nin that read, "We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospection." And as an author, I understand the depth of this quote. I thought it was quite fitting and special. So lunch was followed by a tour of the War Memorial. This was so very moving for me. You see, when I was growing up, we had an elderly couple living across the road. They were grandparents figures to me and my family. The husband, who we affectionately called Uncle Tom, served in World War I at Gallipoli. Because the centenary had happened, the records are now available to the public, and I was able to look up his war records, which were quite remarkable. It was moving, to say the least, to think about the young man that he was, sacrificing his youth for his country. Lovingly and respectfully, I placed a red poppy in memory of the man we knew as Uncle Tom. The next day we stopped at Coffs Harbour, where we travelled to the Great Dividing Range, the 3rd longest mountain range in the world. We viewed the township from the Forest Sky Pier, followed by a visit to the Botanic Gardens before heading off to Brisbane and farewelling my new friends who were continuing their journey further north. I, on the other hand, had a wonderful 3 days at the Palazzo Versace on Gold Coast, where I caught up with a girlfriend over, should I say it, a glass of champagne and a tropical fruit platter. And as fate would have it, one of my nephews and his family were holidaying nearby, so we got to catch up for dinners and drinks and cocktails. What's not to love about travel and taking in all the experiences and serendipity? I arrived back home in time to celebrate my youngest daughter's 25th birthday. A week or so later, I enjoyed another extra long weekend at the beach house and launched my online course, caught up with friends before returning to work in early February, as well as launching my diary, by the way. But back at work and with the diary and the online course launched, I was back in full swing with my work and fellow team members in Melbourne. A lot was going on, at work, all against the backdrop of my middle daughter's wedding that was happening on the 11th of March. I was getting my home spruced up for the bride-to-be. I made a bridal decoration for my front door, and on the cooler days, baked fruitcake, especially to serve at the wedding. But 2 weeks before the wedding, I was planning to celebrate my birthday with a dinner for my 3 daughters and future son-in-law, who also happens to share my birthday. I'd been cooking up a feast to welcome the children home and was left wondering why my eldest and younger daughter had not yet arrived. My eldest daughter broke the news to us that their father was involved in a cycling accident and had to be rushed to hospital. So all I can say is that he was lucky to be alive, having had multiple fractures, concussion and short-term memory loss. Let me remind you that this is 2 weeks before the wedding. So the next week he will spend in hospital. Any tasks that were allocated to him fell on my shoulders, and I had enough already. As well as holding space for my children and for him as we all navigated this episode. My future son-in-law injured his knee and needed physio to help him show up on the big day. Thankfully, we all pulled together, and I helped as much as I could, especially to help my eldest daughter, who had now become a carer to her father, whilst my middle daughter was preparing for her wedding and my youngest daughter had just been offered a full-time job. I took my son-in-law to his first physio appointment. I purchased a microwave for my ex and gave him my heat bag so that he could get relief from his shoulder pain. It went on and on. Too many stories to share here, as if what I haven't shared isn't enough. But the piece de resistance was on the wedding day. I think my dress getting locked into my ensuite is a whole nother episode, but I'll leave that for another time. So it got me thinking about the wise words from John Lennon when he said, life is what is happening to us when we're busy making other plans. And I think, we can have all the best intentions in the world. We can carve out time for ourselves, carve out our downtime, carve out our holiday time, look forward to celebrations. But inevitably, somewhere in between all of that, all the good things, challenging things happen. So life indeed was happening, life was challenging, but as I reminded my daughters, we face everything and rise, and that we did. My ex-husband and I walked our daughter down the aisle. He had his father and daughter dance, and we all danced night away celebrating the marriage of our daughter to her wonderful husband. It has been a challenging start to the year. It's been filled with beautiful memories, and anything worth waiting for is going to have its challenges and it's going to have its ups and downs. But how we respond is within us. We have the power to choose. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope as you go about your life and your joys and happiness and challenges that you get to dig deep and become the best person you possibly can. Until next time. You've been listening to Business Class presented by Eugenia Panterhos, founder of Business Class Collective. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcast, subscribe, rate and review this podcast. Share the love and let your family and friends know too. You can follow Business Class Collective on Instagram and Facebook. Join me next time.